Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
DKWilkinson.com. Professional Australian voiceovers are proud to be a four-wheeled sponsor of Negative Camber. DKWilkinson.com. With over 10,000 commercials voiced and an international award for a commercial advert. Commercial and corporate, we do make a difference. Phone messages for under $10. DKWilkinson.com. Your professional wordsmith.
This podcast is proudly supported by Matt Hall from DR Kart South Australia, HandyPay, SA's leading personal lender, Patrizzi Course, and Tindo Solar, Australia's only solar panel manufacturer.
It's time for Negative Camber.
This is the opportunity that Senna's looking for, and he's going through. Ouch! Oh my goodness, this is fantastic!
Proudly sponsored by Tindo Solar. Start generating free energy and saving money with Aussie-made solar. Call 1300 846 367 or visit their website tindosolar.com.au. And now it's time to introduce your hosts, Jamie Lemure and Lee Harrison.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Negative Camber, the official motorsport show, proudly supporting Scuderia Ferrari Club Adelaide. I hope you all, everyone, on what has been a massive day for motorsport fans, Christmas Day for us here in Australia, with the Bathurst 1000 being run and just recently finished probably about half an hour ago. Alongside me is the man with golden locks and the piercing blue eyes, Mr. Lee Harrison.
Hello, Jamie. Wow, what an intro, except, you know, my eyes are not blue, they're hazel, but we'll let that one slip through to the keeper tonight.
Oh, the blue eyes with love after you've won a Bang Energy can off me after our little wager this afternoon over the outcome of the 1000.
Yeah,
the curse of the pole position has officially been broken. Sure
was, and what a good race it was. You know, plenty of action going on up and down the field. But I'll tell you what, these Bang Energy drinks taste even better when they're courtesy of your back pocket and not mine.
Yes. A couple of moths came flying out of my wallet, but I was glad to exchange that with the OTR, so it was fine.
Not as many moths as when Scafey opened his wallet yesterday and they were flying around at the top of the mountain.
You leave the great man out of this, mate. He's an absolute gent. I've got to say, they cop a lot of grief, that commentary team, with some of the experts on social media, but the quality of that commentary over the course of the weekend was absolutely superb. I loved it. And that's irrespective of the love I have for the great man. I actually thought it was fantastic.
They do a great job, you know, when you're listening to people that know what they're talking about, kind of like our radio show. It makes it even easier to watch and listen to. So, you know, I loved having Mark Larkin back on board and down in the pit lane, getting his whiteboard out. And Shay sat with me this afternoon and had some late lunch, early dinner, and got to witness one of Larko's great whiteboard segments, and she was all about it. She absolutely loved Larko the legend.
I had the great fortune of meeting Larko back in 2017 at the 500 when I was in the pits with the man that was meant to be on tonight, Mr. Adam Vella, but who pulled up lame this morning, so couldn't make the show.
If it was a horse, we would have put him down.
Yes, gladly would have used the syringe myself. No, I'm only joking. Hi Ads, hope you're doing well, mate. And yeah, look, he's awesome. He's just as good in person as what he is on TV. But now we will cover the Bathurst 1000 in great detail a little bit later on. Speaking of which, on December 19, we are proud to announce that we are going to be live on Facebook with our first ever web show.
Yep.
Which is going to be really, really cool. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to prove that I have a face for radio.
And it's going to prove the goldenness of my locks.
100%. The lights will do you wonders. But no, we're going to have a special 3-hour show with two very, very special guests, Mr. Dean Canto and ex-MotoGP World Championship engineer Jeremy Burgess, who's going to be on the show as well, which I'm really excited about.
Super exciting. Great guests to have on, both with an absolute wealth of knowledge in their respective fields of motorsport. So lucky we got that extra hour. We had to, prod and poke for it, but we finally got it, and we're going to use every minute of it up. We probably could have gone for 4 or 5 hours with those two, but that's probably more than enough of people looking at our ugly mugs on the TV. But it'll be simulcast to the radio station as well, so wherever you get to listen to us, and of course it'll go up on the Spotify for the podcast later on in the week as well. But yeah, can't wait to do the first ever web show for our brand.
Yeah, look, I'm really excited. It's going to be a chance for us to sort of, have our first TV show, I guess you could say. But it's also a next step, considering the journey that we've gone in less than 12 months on this. So
crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy to think that not even 12 months ago we were sitting at your dining room table wondering what the hell are we actually going to talk about on our first podcast and whether it's going to actually be any good. And here we sit now.
Did you know, and I'm going to start with the did you know in our opening segment, did you know that Biscuits, Mr. Matt Biscuits Mahar, who is currently listening at the moment, was still the highest downloaded show in this year?
That's because he's listened to it 55 times himself, because that's how he is. He's made sure that he's gone back through it, probably made his mum listen to it 5 times. And look, if he is listening, he can feel free to text in or give us a phone call and tell us what he thought of the great race this afternoon. He shared a few thoughts with me this afternoon through Messenger, but more than happy to have him share some thoughts live as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he did the same with me too. It's always good fun with Biscuits. But yes, so the web show will be broadcast live on the Radio Italia Uno Facebook page, which you can then share, and I encourage everyone to share through all of your social media platforms. If you truly love us, please share it. And it'll be on our Facebook page and other social media forums, I guess, as well. So it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, can't wait. I'm going to have it shared to my Facebook pages, Revhead Harry, and my personal ones. So hoping that everyone jumps on board and shows some support. We've had lots of special guests on this season as well. So fingers crossed they put some out as well. And yeah, should be a good time.
Speaking of good time, the Scuderia Ferrari Club hosted their final event on the weekend just gone, which was the Aussie Karts Tail and Bend 200. And cracking race, a fantastic race, not purely because of the actual show, it's always a good time there at the Bend, but the actual quality of race itself was fantastic. So we had 12 karts or 24 drivers line up on the grid, and my dear friend next to me played a vital role in how this whole race played out. So because you lost the race, I'd like to allow you the opportunity to give us a summation.
It was a good race. We had the 5-lap qualifying or 5-minute qualifying to start off with. I managed to put it on pole by a little margin.
2.5 seconds.
Yeah, just a little bit. And then led the race. I got beaten to the first corner, actually. I think Harrison Gifford, weighing about 30 kilos less than me, got the card off the line a little bit better. And then from there, it's just sort of set about passing him, which took me, the best part of about half a lap. And then worked on building my lead, had probably 20-something seconds by the time we made the first pit stop. Mm-hmm. Started getting into some lap traffic right towards the end of the stint there. Mum jumped in and we sort of got pegged back a little bit, but not heaps. I still think I jumped in with a 27-second lead at the end of her stint.
Yep.
Built that up and I think nearly lapped up to second place in the second stint of the race. And there was a couple of guys that were having some issues with some karts, so I sort of put my foot in the door and burst it open for them and asked the Bend to sort them out with some better karts and just help them out, because they shouldn't have been that far off the pace. Guys like Simon and Luke Fraser were struggling, so got them a better kart, and then from there they set about catching us back up. I just sort of did the best that I could, and Mum did her absolute awesome best as well. And unfortunately, with about 10 laps to go, the lead changed hands for the first time in the race, and Simon and Matt Stead ended up getting us to the line by about 15 seconds or so.
Yeah, it was an epic comeback, I got to say. Credit to Matt and Simon Reichelt. So yeah, they had some issues with the kart in terms of pace. Their actual problem was a 3/4 full throttle.
Yeah.
So, which on a track like the Bend is not going to do you any good. So they actually swapped their karts at the first fuel stop, which is about lap 50. And so 2 seconds per lap improvement. And
he went from doing like 67s or 68s or something consistently to dumping around in the 64s with me. Like, I pushed him around for a couple of laps at the end of our first stint, and then by the end of our second, I got in the cart for the second stint, slowed down and waited for him a little bit, thinking, they're not really going to be any hassle. We're miles in front of them already. And then sort of I'll sit, he can sit behind me and I'll drag him back up through the field. And I couldn't shake him. He was just sitting on my tail. He led some laps. I led some laps, racing with each other. But, at the end of the day, maybe I shot myself in my own foot there.
Well, that's when I was speaking to Simon, actually Matt, before we went out on the stint, we were looking at that portion of the race. I actually turned around to Matt and I said, look, if Simon's actually switched on, and tactically Simon's actually a pretty switched on guy, he's holding pace with you, he should try and stick with you, and you'll drag him back up through the field. And that's exactly what happened, much to our detriment. So when I say our, mine and Joe, because we were fighting for the title with Matt. But, and bit by bit, as the race went on, they just chipped away. And, I mean, you and he were probably 1.5, when you guys were on the track, 1.5 to 2 seconds a lap quicker than anyone else.
Yeah.
When your mum was back on board and then Matt and myself were in there was probably about a half a second between me and Matt and close to 3/4 of a second to your mum. So what was actually happening is all that hard work that you would actually be doing in the first half of the race, we would then make it back up. So the lead between sort of the top 3 or 4 for the most part never actually got any further than half a lap, 3/4 of a lap.
Yeah.
Myself and Joe, in the end, we were sort of we were in podium contention until probably the last 50 laps. And, as it was, we dragged Matt along towards the end when we caught up to your mum and passed, and then he got past me and past her, and that was the end of that.
Yeah.
So,
Mum did a great job. I think she just got
really well.
She was a big track for her. It was a hot day. She took a couple of laps, 5 or 6 laps every stint to just sort of get into her rhythm, and a little bit of inconsistencies crept in, but she did a stellar job to bring us home second overall.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, can't be more proud of the job she done. So we are happy to get away with it, and I got her some nice trophies to take home that night as well, with fastest lap in the race and fastest qualifier as well. So yeah, super good.
You actually set the fastest lap of the year at the bend.
Yeah. I did that in qualifying in 5 laps, so everyone was pretty already, on my case about it, and then managed to find another half a second. But that lap, I have to thank Simon for that lap, because he got in front of me in the second stint, I think it was, and then he got away from me through some lap traffic because I was a little bit kinder than he was, and he was about 5 or 6 kart lengths in front of me, and I got a wicked tow off of him. So I thought, sweet, if I can just get in the tow and he can drag me around for a lap, I'll be on. I was hoping to get in the 63s, but I think I had to worry about a 64.2, I think is what I walked away with. So fastest lap for the year at the bend, and I don't think it's going to get beaten for the rest of the year, so that'll be a nice achievement.
Highly doubt it. Actually, J. Lem there was pretty proud of himself, getting 4th spot on the grid. I was, half a second off Harrison Gifford, and Harrison's probably got his body weight is probably the equivalent weight of my calf.
Yeah.
So, Harrison, how you going? I hope you're doing well, buddy. But, I was stoked that got us right in the box seat, and we had Joe start the race because I knew he was a lightweight, and it played out for us beautifully. But, we got 4th overall in the end. I'm still stoked with that. We threw everything in the kitchen sink at it.
Yeah. No, it was a good race, and it's a shame we didn't have, 10 more karts on the grid, which we were hoping for, but maybe next time we'll have to go again and see what happens. It's a big event, and it was super, super good fun, and to have it come down to only sort of 15, 20 seconds at the end of 200 laps around there, 200-odd minutes of racing, can't complain about that.
No, massive achievement, absolutely. So I'll run through the top 5 overall. So first place was Simon Reichelt and Matt Stead. Matt wrapping up the heavy championship with that win. Second place was Lee Harrison, Ros Harrison. Third place was Harrison Gifford and Bojan Krstic. Fourth place was Jamie Lemura and Joe Nero. Yes, I spoke in third person there. Fifth place, Dylan Richter and Luke Fraser. So the winner of the amateur class was actually the father-son combination of Max and Peter Valerani. Pro-Am was Simon Reichelt and Matt Stead, and the Pro was Harrison Gifford and Bojan Krstic. Pole position was awarded to Mr. Lee Harrison, and the Super Cheap Auto fastest lap was also to Lee Harrison as well.
It was pretty cool as well to do a random draw for the prize pack for Super Cheap Auto. It was good to have their stuff and their sponsorship on board, but yeah, with my level of experience, I didn't feel right trying to take the chocolates there. So did a randomizer and drew out the drivers of car number 15. So they got a nice little car wash gift set at the end of the night.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was quite generous of you, mate. I probably would have taken the car wash home myself. But yeah, look, the biggest takeaway for me from that race was obviously you forget how physical and how mentally taxing that race actually is.
Yeah.
You know, people would think 200 laps on a hire car, but it took me personally 3 days to get over that race physically and also mentally as well.
Yeah, I did an F45 session the day beforehand too. So on Saturday morning, I went pretty hard at F45, forgetting about the fact that I had to do 110 odd kilometres in a go-kart the next day. And I was already feeling quite stiff when I woke up Sunday morning. Had heaps of magnesium and stuff the night before, but I didn't do the trick. So I was on the floor of my lounge room, stretching and twisting, trying to loosen up. And then the hour and a bit drive up there, I tightened myself all back up again. So by the time we got to the bend, I was saying to Mum, I wish I could just turn around and go back home. I didn't want to do it. But yeah, pushed through, and I was the same as well. Monday was a hard day to walk. It took me, I think, till Wednesday before I was ready enough to go back to the gym again.
Yeah. But as I said, and I've always said, hire karts is a discipline of karting, but nothing beats seat time and endurance. I mean, with the amount of laps that we had in our legs in terms of the physical aspect of it, we probably could have done 3 Southern Go-Kart Club Enduros quite easily.
Yeah, quite easy.
But no, it was a great event by the Scuderia Ferrari Club. It was the final event for this particular season. So with a bit of luck, we'll have the Hire Kart Championship and another endurance race next year for sure. But on that note, we will be off to a break and we will come back after a few short messages and talk karting.
Radio Italia 1.
You're listening to Negative Camber, proudly sponsored by Tindo Solar, the only Australian-made solar panel. Tindo's panels are made right here in Adelaide and are built for our unique Aussie weather. Call them today on 1300 846 367.
Welcome back to Negative Camber, the motorsport show, live from the studios here at Radio Italia 1 87.6 FM, proudly supporting the Scuderia Ferrari Club Adelaide. Before we get into our next segment, I want to say a big shout out and a big hello to my beautiful sister-in-law Marissa, who's having her birthday today. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it, but I did send her a message with lots of cuddles and hugs and kisses. So big shout out to her. I hope you are having a good day. So from all of us here in the team here at Negative Camber, blow out those candles and have a slice of cake. I think you deserve it.
And you could send one over for us too, because I love cake.
Who doesn't love cake, really?
I know some people that don't like cake, but...
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they would prefer, like a vanilla slice or something like that.
It's possible. Yeah. Depends if it's got the chocolate icing and stuff on there.
Chocolate icing on a vanilla slice?
Yeah, you get the icing with like the chocolate swirl and stuff through it, like the continental ones. They're the best.
I don't like... I'm not sure of them. Like, I'm just thinking of like a white sprinkle, white coconut icing.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah,
possible.
yeah.
You haven't lived if you haven't had the Italian one.
Oh, I'll have to have some Italian one.
I think you should. Anyway, Australian Karting Championship preview. So this weekend coming will be the final round of the shortened Australian Karting Championship, proudly supported and presented by Castrol and SP Tools, which is going to be held at the Monarto Go-Kart Club this year. Mr. Harrison is going to give us a preview of this particular series.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that we've got 2 rounds of the championship in South Australia. I don't think of a time that's actually happened, whether, even in the old days of CIK Championship, it's always been just 1 round in Adelaide. So to have a second round, one at Southern, one at Monarto, and congratulations as well to Southern for getting the AKC confirmed at their track next season.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Hoping to make it up there. Have been asked to mechanic, but we'll have to see how tomorrow goes at work, whether I can get the couple of days off towards the end of the week. But should be a great event nonetheless. And loads of championships are still up for grabs. I think we were looking through before, and there's only 1 or 2 that are pretty well signed, sealed and delivered. But we'll do a bit of a deep dive into each class and run through who's who in the zoo.
Before you get into that, just for the people playing at home that aren't too familiar with what we're talking about, so essentially this is actually now the premier karting championship in the Southern Hemisphere. So the best karting drivers across Australia compete for the honour of being the Australian champion. So We'll now cross over to those classes that you mentioned, starting with
Cadet 9. So the top three in the championship at the moment, we have Sebastian Eskandari Morandi on 202 points, Zach Hilda on 145, and Alistair Flack on 145. In fourth place, there is a South Australian, Dominic Mercury, but he's a fair way off the pace and not really in championship contention.
Yep.
So this one's pretty well wrapped up. Sebastian Eskandari Morandi has the championship pretty well signed, sealed and delivered already. But it's going to be a cracking battle in this class. It's going to be good to see how Dominic Mercury goes on home soil. And the other two drivers are going to be there cracking at his heels to make sure he doesn't run away with too many points this weekend. But we've got a few South Australian drivers in the field to keep our eye on as well. We've got Ileana Stojic, our own Ileana Stojic.
Yep.
We've got Desmond Harrell. We've got Levi Ross, Mike Capobianco, and Arthur Smith. So a few South Australians representing there. Be interesting to see how they go. But Dominic Mercury has been stellar all year, and I reckon he's got the pace to go at the front with these guys.
I would actually expect all the local South Australian runners who raced here, across all classes who raced here relatively recently, to have home track advantage in the early stages. I think a lot of the interstate teams are going to struggle to get to grips with it. I think by Sunday, though, they should all get their heads around it. Yep. But what it does do is it gives these all competitors from SA, in particular during practice and qualifying, a really good advantage speed-wise to pluck some good positions early on. Yeah,
a lot of the teams were here 2 weeks ago to do some testing before the track closed, and I think a few stayed on to come down to Bolivar and do some more testing ahead of next year as well. So plenty of testing miles have been logged when the borders did reopen again, and it was announced that the track was going to host the championships. So be interesting to see how they go. We'll move on to Cadet 12. Lewis Francis on 162 points leads the championship from Jackson Burns on 134, and then James Anagnostiadis in third on 128 points. Our own Ocean Colangelo sits in 14th in the championship on 44 points. Hasn't had the best run in the couple of rounds that she's competed in.
However, adding to that, she's actually about 4 points off the ladies' championship overall, which is what their target is.
She does, yeah. So that's being led at the moment by Ava Anagnostiadis and Bet Connell in second place, with Taylor Aegis behind Ocean. So that's going to be a battle that comes down to the wire for the ladies' championship. But this Cadet 12 championship, it's been hard fought by the Burnses and Lewis Francis. This is another close one, and it could go down to the wire in the final. Others to look out for, we've got Kai Burke, who's the reigning champion. Jensen Burns, Noah Enright, Ocean will be fast, being on one of her home tracks. Riley Harrison. So a few South Australian drivers there to watch out for, but other SA drivers in this field, you've got Sam Spiteri, Massimo Calabro, Will Cowie, Mitch Bergmeister, and Michael... I've written his last name down wrong. Campresi. So they're the South Australians to watch out for in that field, but I think this one is too hot to call. Yeah, look, it's I suppose you don't want to put pressure on kids, especially when it comes to Australian Championship. They've got to go out there and enjoy themselves, and obviously Cadet 12 is probably the most competitive class I've seen. Little bit of pressure on, say, Noah Enright, purely because of the fact that he's done the double, winning the Festival State Cup and the State Championship. So when you win those two titles, all of a sudden there comes to the masses, there's a sense of expectation that you've also got to put your best foot forward on the big stage.
So, look, I think a lot of the South Australian contingent, I mean, even Mitch Bergmeister had a cracking race at Monardo over the last two times he's been there.
Yeah.
So, it should be interesting to see how that all pans out. But I think, guys like Noah, Ocean, Lewis, Jackson, they're all going to play their part in that for sure.
100%. It's interesting you say about the pressure being put on the young kids at the Nationals, and of course it is only a new thing. They did go away for a long time from running sub-juniors, let's call it, your cadets and Cadet 9 and Cadet 12. It was originally called midgets and rookies at the national level. They did run them for a little while and then stopped them, and the Nationals were a one-off event held over Easter weekend every year, and my favourite part of the weekend, a repechage was held if classes were oversubscribed.
The repechage.
But there was no sub-juniors. It was only, junior national light back in those days, the equivalent now of KA4, and onwards that contested the nationals. So an interesting inclusion by Karting Australia to bring that pressure back to the younger kids and put them on show on the big level.
Oh, look, for me, I think if these kids are at that stage, they've got aspirations to make it big. Mitch, for example, has got aspirations to make it a Porsche Carrera Cup. These other kids probably got aspirations to go to V8 supercars. Ocean, for example, wants to make it to Formula One.
Yeah.
They've got to experience the pressure now.
Exactly.
Because if they go overseas, it's 10 times worse.
Exactly.
And 10
I think
times
that's
more competitive.
What they do. They're setting the kids up now to move overseas earlier and be able to deal with the complications of the pressure that come from over there racing for the big teams. But that being said, KA4 Junior will be the next one on track, and Alex Ninovich has absolutely signed, sealed, delivered. This title is already on the cart, basically, on 180 points. His closest competitor, Will Newell's, on 117. But the battle is fierce for second and third spot. Ben Munro is on 107 points.
Yep.
And Jack Shuchuk is the best placed South Australian in this field, sitting 14th on 22 points. But all those guys that used to give me rubbish for driving a PCR and who'd want to drive a PCR, blah, blah, blah. Look at this guy. Alex Ninovich has absolutely smashed it in this series running a PCR. This field's probably the closest field at most of the rounds with, anything of 4 or 5 guys up for grabs. So they'll be out to put it on display again. Alex Ninovich, Will Newell, Ben Munro, they'll be hard to beat. We've got a few South Australians running as well to keep an eye on. Chris Alexopoulos, Salvatore Imbrogno, Joe Imbrogno, Darcy Hayne, Josh Elliston and Riley Fortana. They'll be out to make sure that they put their best foot forward on home soil.
Good to see Riley on Friday night. Young
God,
Riley.
Man, hosting the KA Awards, or Karting South Australia Awards, I should say, on Friday night with your lovely self. And, man, those little kids, they're such shits, aren't they? Such shits.
Are we allowed to swear on air, Mark? Sorry? Oh, that's okay. Cool.
Yeah, I think that was okay.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I'll just make a call to the president.
Sorry for my vulgar language there, my French on an Italian radio station.
Yeah, I don't know. I put it this way, if it was my child that threw a paper plane at you, they certainly would be disciplined, probably privately, but I certainly wouldn't get my kids to do that to presenters. I thought that was
no, look, I mean, known those kids since they came out of the womb, basically, most of that family, and been around that sport for long enough that a little bit of cheeky fun can be had at the end of the night. I did end up putting Noah in a bit of a sweep and threw him to the floor and knee-rode him like my jiu-jitsu teaching 9-year-old has taught me. So, all's fair in love and war, I reckon. But I didn't even know he'd thrown a paper plane at me. People were just laughing, and I must have done some wicked Bruce Lee dodging moves and missed it.
Must have been all that sort of jiu-jitsu stuff you've been learning with your kids. You had that sort of super evasive powers.
Matrix moves and stuff like that.
So I have an excuse. I've got glasses. I'm blind. I see beans.
It is what it is. They threw one at me later on in the night and it's got me square in the chest. So I'll take that out on them at the track next weekend.
Who we got next?
KA3 Senior is our first senior category on the track, and this one's still up for grabs. Jace Matthews on 150 points, Benito Montalbano on 131 points, and James Serra on 115. This one is probably the most star-studded field in the category, or in the championship. There's probably 15 or 20 drivers that could win this, where you've got the likes of Kip Foster, Bailey Sweeney, Marcus Flack, who's raced plenty in Europe, Tane Venables, Stephen Sesmelis, Curtis Tennant, Benito, Jason Declan Matthews, all in there. And then, you start looking at the South Australian drivers, and none of them are any slouches either. You got Leo Varelli, Keo Fechner, Matthew Neitz, Brad Vaughan, Jaden Catalano, Troy Fatena. There's, like I said, there's probably 10 or 15 people in this class that could win it. What surprises me is no Nikki Watson being on a South Australian round. I thought she would have taken part, but I know she's finishing off some study and all that sort of stuff as well. So maybe not being in the hunt for the championship, that's sort of taken some precedence. Well,
you're only as good as your last race, and when you've got a surname that's named after a famous Italian detective, L'Ispettore Montalbano. So from now on, Benito is now known as L'Ispettore. Right, so the inspector, I reckon he'll win. I'm calling it.
Yep, okay. Look, I think it's going to be hard to beat the Matthews brothers. They've been fast, real fast every time they've been put on tracks. So I'm gonna put my money behind them, so to speak, and back them in.
Cool. Go the Inspector.
Tag 125, again, a title that's way up for grabs. You got Brendan Nelson on 148, Cody Bruczynski on 134 points, Hamish Fitzsimmons on 121, and Ruben Goodall on 111. So really, any of those four could potentially win the championship. For Ruben, he'd need a few things to go wrong for others to take it.
Yep.
But look, anything can happen. He was super quick at the Bolivar round, but Brendan Nelson, Cody Bruczynski. Cody's an ex-world champion in Rotax. Brendan's won multiple state and national titles, so he's got a stellar field. Others looking strong into the year. Sort of got Lee Nicolo in there. He's never one to sort of hang around and not leave anything to chance. Zach Hurd. And this one's really hotly contested with South Australian drivers. You got the likes of, like Ruben Goodall, like I said, Johnny Twigden. You've got Nathan, Ollie and Jordan Simpson. So the whole Simpson family running in that class. Ollie Simpson used to race in Moto 3. So he's changed from 2 wheels to 4. Sam Murtinen is in there as well with Brock Harrison, Braden Parkinson and Cooper Brown. So a strong contingent of South Australians there looking to finish their year on a high.
Brock racing 2-stroke. That's interesting.
Brock's run on a 2-stroke. I think he's done a few year races. I'm sure we presented him some awards for Tag 125. He was up there that many times on Friday night, so I lost count on what we were actually giving him.
True. You know what? Friday night for me was a bit of a blur, and thank you very much to Karting SA and for those that actually showed support for us being up on stage. We had a couple of page likes and bits and pieces after on the Facebook page after, so that was nice to see.
Yeah, lots
Clearly
of people.
they liked you.
Well, I've got a face for presenting, so, yours is best left behind the microphone.
I can't blame you. I can't blame you for thinking that.
We'll move on to X30 and local boy Jacob Dowson leading this one. This is the second closest title race that is left to run. He's 4 points in front of Harrison Hoey, who's on 126 points. Jace Matthews still in a mathematical chance of doing the double and taking out the KA3 as well as X30 crowns. And he's on 110 points. Brad Jenner on 107. So again, 4 guys in the hunt for the championship. Second closest title left on display. It's going to be massively good to watch this. It always is X30. Jacob has that home track advantage, so you'd
ripper form.
Yeah, expect him to be strong, but there's going to be plenty of people there ready to upset the charge. Bo Prenesti, he was fast last round at Bolivar. You got Christian Cowie, Jackson Susel and Harlow, old David Serra in there as well, so he's no slouch. He's probably got enough green plates to fill the back of a small lorry. Geordie Macron, they're all there looking to spoil the party, but a few SA drivers. You've got Dowson and Cowie, like I said. You've got Ryan Morgan in there, who's not going to be slow either if his form's anything to go by. Parker Scott and Austin Worrell, South Australians to keep an eye on in that field. Move on to KA2. Jordan Shalala on 123 points, Leon Cordato on 118, and Costa Toparis on 93. Now, what surprises me on this entry list is that there is no Jordan Shalala this weekend.
Really?
Yes, I couldn't find his name in the program.
Wow. On the verge of winning the title.
Yes, so that leaves the door open for the other 2 boys, Leon and Costa, to sneak on through and wipe it out from underneath him. I'm hoping that was a misprint and that the battle will go down to the wire, but I couldn't find his name on there. Whether there was issues with him getting across from Victoria or not, who knows? But there's plenty of other drivers in this field that are going to be there to put their noses in the fight. You got Harry Arnett, Peter Busnellos, Max Walton, Jack Childs. And then a big bunch of SA drivers have gone out and either leased or bought KA2 engines just for this weekend. So you've got Leo Iannella, Wes Bowden making his debut in the class, Ben Holliday, Jacob Chandler, and Anthony Capobianco as well. So 4 or 5 decently paced South Australians there to try and mix it with this bumper field of KA2.
Yep. Oh, good. And the Premier class.
Premier class. Well, some say it's the Premier class. I still think X30 is the Premier class, but hey, that's just my own opinion. KZ2 and the KZ2 Trophy. You got Troy Losco on 162 points, Cody Gillis 122, Jay Kuehl in 114 in third place. It's really Troy Losco's championship to lose, so he'll be hoping he doesn't pinch some front brakes going into turn one and throwing himself into the gravel again.
Yes.
The whole of the Patrizzi course team will be hoping for that to end the year on a high. Super strong field, as always. Jason Faint, Josh Fife, Josh Denton, Cody Gillis, Jay Kuehl. They're going to be out there to pump the year end up on a high. And the closest title fight that we've got left on the track is the fight for the KZ2 trophy. Scott Chaston is leading this on 179 points, and Mr. Chuppa Chup himself, Johnny Grother, is right behind him, snapping at his heels on 178 points.
Mr. Chuppa Chup.
Mr. Chuppa Chup, Mr. Johnny Grother. You couldn't even throw a Chuppa Chup wrapper between that point score at the moment. Like, seriously, that is as close can get.
Where did he get Chuppa Chup from?
Ever since I've known the guy on track, he was sponsored by Chuppa Chup, and all of his helmets are Chuppa Chup, like Chuppa Chup wrapper inspired helmets. So he's gone through all of the flavours, your cherries. His current one's based on the cola, I think, from memory, so it's nice and blue. But
that's cool.
Back in my junior days, I think it was in like the year 2000, maybe just 2001. After one of the CIK rounds, they ran a junior development day where they had driver coaches stay back from the Premier class, which was Formula A then, and we all got assigned a driver who would go out on the track and oversee our driving and give us any hints and tips and all that sort of stuff. And I got Mr. Chuppa Chup, Johnny Grother, and which was good because me and him are similar height, lankiness, the rest of it. So all the things that he could teach me about how to drive and use my weight, my height, and all that sort of stuff to my advantage was really, really helpful and critical in helping me progress in my career. So we've had a super strong relationship sort of over the last few years, especially with the connection to Soddy. He's the Soddy race team manager, and being with the higher karts and Soddys, and there's been a good connection there, so we've become good friends over the last few years. So yeah, I'm hoping that he gets up. Him and Scott are the only two entries in the KZ2 trophy this weekend, so it's going to be whoever wins this final is the champion, and you can't ask for much more than that.
What do you reckon? Do you reckon we give a shout out to Lee Hanacek and see if he wants us to commentate the races at Southern Go-Kart Club next year?
We can do that too. Like, I would actually say we just put our hands up for that. No worries. We could do that every single weekend, really. Any weekend that we're not racing, we could go out there and be behind the mic.
Maybe we should.
You'd have to get your excitement up. Can you handle being excited for a whole day?
Mate, don't you worry about me. Don't you worry about me. Come the moment, come the man.
No, I hope so. We touched on the ladies' trophy. Ava Anagnostiadis leads that at the moment from Beck Connell, Oceane Colangelo and Taylor Aegis. Manufacturers' Championship, Paralyn have got that in the bag, 697 points to Cosmic's 576.
Do you reckon they got it in the bag?
Yeah, they've got it in the bag. Too many strong drivers, too many good results. So I think it's going to take some overcoming coming from them. And the Shamik with the team's championship wrapped up as well, 664 points to PCR 459. Again, another big stuff you to all the people that bagged PCR and what they're about, because they're showing good hills in this championship. But looking forward to the weekend. The weather's going to be awesome. It's been kind to us, and I can't wait to see it all unfold.
Fantastic wrap up, my friend. That's some of your finest work.
Thank you. I spent so many hours on that one.
Yes, I can tell. It's been good. It's been good. We're going to be back, after a break, and we will come back talking Formula One.
Radio Italia 1.
You're listening to Negative Camber, proudly sponsored by Tindo Solar, the only Australian-made solar panel. Tindo's panels are made right here in Adelaide and are built for our unique Aussie weather. Call them today on 1300 846 367.
Welcome back to Negative Camber, the motorsport show proudly supporting Scuderia Ferrari Club Adelaide, live from the studios of Radio Italia 1 on 87.6 FM. Now, Mr. Excitement. The Mr. Lee is back.
Again.
Yes.
This is becoming all too common.
It's all too common.
Yes.
And I have
I love it, though.
We have an introductory music for the Mr. Lee theme. All right.
You and your random sound effects the last couple of shows, I tell you.
Hey, mate, don't you worry about that.
So professional.
It is, very much so. At least I didn't swear it live on air.
This is true.
Now, a question from our dear friend Mr. Biscuits. When is a street circuit actually classified as a street circuit?
Yeah, look, I know where we're going with this one, and it's in regard to the Jeddah street circuit. It does use streets that were already there, so that's where it becomes a street circuit. The same could be said for the Adelaide Parklands. When is that actually a street circuit? Because it does use a part of track that's purpose-built. Same with Townsville street circuit, and all those sorts of places that are like that. But if it uses streets that are there and will return back to the public after they have been used by Formula One or touring cars or whichever category it is, then it's fairly classified as a street circuit. Same with the Norris Ring, that's a street circuit. Again, it uses roads that are then returned back to the public. So with regard to the Saudi Arabian track, yes, a lot of it is purpose-built, and a lot of it was built for the purpose of holding the Formula One, but when they are finished, it will return to the public to be used as general roads. So it's all part of their infrastructure development as well. So yeah, that's sort of, I guess, where anything becomes a street circuit. If it's on a purpose-built allotment that it stays there for the purpose of motor racing activities for the majority of the year, then I think it becomes a purpose-built racetrack. But like I said, with regard to Saudi Arabia, that's going to return to the use of the general public for their road and motor car, motorbike, activities. So it's a fully blown street circuit.
Where would you then classify Mount Panorama?
Well, that's a street circuit as well. It's a country, a road, a scenic road. It's under the restrictions of only being used on X amount of days per year. So in my opinion, that's a street circuit as well. And that's how it's all, as I feel, it's always been looked at.
Well, Biscuits did ask, what your thoughts were, being your FIA-trained colleague and all, tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
But this is what he said. Valencia, would you call that 50-50, or would you call that a street circuit?
It's a street circuit.
Okay. Saudi Arabia, we've crossed. Singapore is definitely street circuit. Albert Park?
Street circuit.
Okay. Bathurst we covered as well. Then he goes, what about Le Mans?
Le Mans, it's a street circuit too, because as soon as they turn off of out of, I think it's called Bucati, onto the Mulsanne, it's a street circuit. So for when they're using it for the 24-hour street circuit, when they're using Le Mans, just the Bugatti circuit, it's a purpose-built racetrack.
Yeah, exactly. And the last one, if you don't know, Clermont-Ferrand in France, what he called charade.
That's probably,
I'd say road.
Road, yeah. I'm leaning towards road as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Biscuits.
I hope I've answered all his questions.
I think you have.
Sometimes I ignore him when he messages me, so he goes to you because he knows he'll get me on the radio.
Well, we better not ignore the news, and the next break's coming up, so we'll be off to another break, and then we'll be back with Formula One.
Radio Italia 1.
You're listening to Negative Camber, proudly sponsored by Tindo Solar, the only Australian-made solar panel. Tindo's panels are made right here in Adelaide and are built for our unique Aussie weather. Call them today on 1300 846 367.
Welcome back to Negative Camber, proudly supporting Scuderia Ferrari Club Adelaide from the studios of Radio Italia 1 87.6 FM. We are now covering Formula One, and we are going to overview the Losail, or the Qatar Formula One Grand Prix that was held recently. And what were your thoughts on the track?
I love the track. It's definitely a motorbike track, and we saw that with the curbs. It was tearing a few cars apart, but I love that it sort of punished you for using the curbs, not like a lot of the other tracks do these days. Love the track, though. Yeah,
so did Lewis. 100% he did. And I think it made major leeway into his championship, so we'll get some highlights of that.
It's lights out, and away we go. And it's a good start for Hamilton. It's a good start for Alonso, and Gasly could be under pressure soon. Hamilton moves to the inside. Gasly stayed ahead of Alonso, who might pressurise from Gasly. Alonso, then comes Lando Norris. Max Verstappen on the inside has made a brilliant start, but then goes off the track as Fernando Alonso closes the door on him. Verstappen still trying to battle away with Lando Norris, and he's got ahead of the McLaren.
Tremendous start, just what Max Verstappen needed up into P4, and Alonso then through on Gasly, but Lewis Hamilton very clearly out front. He'll take some beating from there. Max on the inside, he can see them all darting around outside. Quite cautious there from him, understandably, but he is just where you need to be in the corner. And then suddenly, Fernando clearly didn't know he was there.
Pierre just been told Max is not our race.
Max is not our race, which is about as subtle as I think they could do that. Gasly's gone very wide there, and that's going to allow Max Verstappen to close down. He's got DRS on Gasly. This could be quite an easy pass down the main straight. It is an easy pass down the main straight. He's still got DRS, and he's ahead of the AlphaTauri. Verstappen started 7th, and now on lap 4 he's up into the podium places.
I don't think Fernando gets silly. He won't be giving this place up easily, but I don't think he's going to fight too hard.
He's not really got the pace to fight it too hard. In the space of a lap here, Fernando Alonso has been overtaken, Pierre Gasly's been overtaken, and Max Verstappen has gone from 4th to 2nd.
I do get the feeling Red Bull have got a very good race car, and looking at the top speeds as well without DRS, they're very similar to the Mercedes, as then Sergio Perez makes his way past Esteban Ocon, confirming Red Bull do. And look, is this a double overtake for Valtteri Bottas? Not quite.
It might not even be one overtake for Valtteri Bottas, who got on the dusty part of the track, and it didn't seem to do him any good. Stroll keeps his place. Bottas, though, does get past Tsunoda. He's up into the points. We did come here fearing that it would be very difficult to follow in that middle sector, so you couldn't get as close as Sergio Perez to Lando Norris to make the overtakes. But look at that, Perez lasting past again with DRS, an extra 10 miles an hour of advantage with a gap opening in that rear wing. Perez now up to 4th. Valtteri Bottas has limbered up. And limbered up nicely. It maybe took him a while to get going in this race, but he's now showing his skills. Well, you've got Alonso and Perez, and you've got Bottas, who needs to make a stop because he hasn't stopped yet. Perez is going to have a go on Alonso here, and he goes around the outside, but Fernando Alonso keeps the speed on the inside, maintains his momentum. Perez and Alonso going wheel to wheel, and this is not over yet as Alonso goes off the track and has to come on behind the Red Bull. He hung that out for as long as he possibly could, and Perez got his elbows out too. Valtteri Bottas has got a puncture. And you can see that front left tyre of Valtteri Bottas has forced him wide and onto the gravel. And this is absolutely destroying Valtteri Bottas's race. He's at turn 7, coming towards turn 8. He's got over half a lap to try and limp home. He's putting gravel onto the circuit as well. Now the yellow flag's very definitely being waved. Oh, and Valtteri Bottas hasn't made his pit stop yet. Going long on this first stint, the only driver who hasn't stopped yet. His race is coming undone. Sergio Perez coming in for another stop.
Sergio Perez now has to get through Lance Stroll, Esteban Ocon, Lando Norris before he gets back to Fernando Alonso.
Tell Esteban to defend like a lion.
And Alonso wants Esteban to do for him what he did for Esteban to win that race in Hungary. Hamilton's just taken the fastest lap off Perez. Here goes Perez on Stroll. That one's been coming. Perez on a 2-stopper, Lance Stroll on a 1-stopper. Now he can get after Ocon.
Like we went for 2 men.
You've got this. You've got the podium. So these guys in the 1-stop, they're going to be suffering.
As they cross the line, and Perez with that extra 10 miles an hour is forced round the outside. Well, I think Ocon did the best he could there, but to the delight of the man waving the Mexican flag, Perez is through. Ocon defends as best he can and still comes back at Sergio Perez just to try and keep the move going, and he's actually going to make a move around the outside, is he? Here at the hairpin, turns 4 and 5, Ocon's really going for it. That was getting his elbows out. There's George Russell with his wings scraping along the ground. Has he got a puncture too? Yes.
Left front's gone as well.
Just seemed very innocuous, that curb, but obviously did enough to start deflating that front left tyre. Charles Leclerc. His teammate ahead of him has got to about a second behind Lance Stroll. And there's another front left tyre, this time Nicholas Latifi in the Williams.
There he goes, a curb strike, but I think the left front was already going down at that point. And of course he's missed the pit lane there in that respect.
A bit like Pierre Gasly in qualifying yesterday.
We will make it off. We should be fine, but let's stay extremely cautious on that front left.
Just a few more corners to go for Lewis Hamilton, who started the fight back in terms of the World Championship chase when we were in Sao Paulo. That fight back has continued here with back-to-back victories for Lewis Hamilton as he now sees the checkered flag in the distance, powers down the main straight and comes home to win the Qatar Grand Prix. Hamilton on top in Qatar. Max Verstappen, though, limiting the damage, started 7th. Will come home to finish 2nd and take that fastest lap point as well. Fernando Alonso back on the podium in Formula 1. Welcome back, Fernando. He comes home to finish 3rd. That is a brilliant result for him and for the Alpine team. Sergio Perez will finish just under 3 seconds behind for Red Bull. Esteban Ocon, a fine evening for Alpine. He'll take 5th place. We go now to the final 2 races with the top 2 separated by not much. And who knows what's going to happen from here on in. Could it still go down to the wire?
Yes, it will, I think. I think it's going to be an absolutely cracking couple of races, but this race really set the cat amongst the pigeons in terms of the championship outcome, and it was just everything that Lewis needed. So, top 10, Lewis Hamilton 1st, Max Verstappen 2nd, Fernando Alonso 3rd, Sergio Perez 4th, Esteban Ocon 5th, Lance Stroll 6th, my boy Carlos Sainz in 7th, Charles Leclerc 8th, Lando Norris in 9th, and my other boy Sebastian Vettel in 10th position. Mr. Harrison, your thoughts?
Yeah, look, an exciting race with plenty going on, like we touched on before we went to the break. Plenty of punctures, plenty of cars getting damaged from the curbs, which is, good to see. Penalty being issued from the racetrack when drivers are exceeding the track limits. But you're right, Lewis did everything he needed to do, and likewise Max, after taking that grid penalty for ignoring the double yellow flags in qualifying, he fought back valiantly and took the fastest lap point. So he did everything as well in his power. I think 2nd was all that they were ever going to achieve. They just didn't really have the pace at all, the Red Bulls.
Yeah, this is probably as well. Mercedes have certainly turned a corner. Certainly, whether it be engine or whether it be aerodynamics or something has clicked more or less since Brazil. Because in Mexico they were nowhere. But I guess you kind of predicted, given that was actually a Red Bull track.
Yeah.
But the gap at Mexico was like, whoa, this is lay down Mazier now.
Yeah.
But something in the last 2 Grand Prix, whether Hamilton's actually lifted, which apparently is what Mercedes are claiming as well. He's actually pulled his thumb out, which took him 3/4 of a season to actually get his act together.
Only 3/4 of a season, but he has been relatively unchallenged for the last 7 of them. So maybe it did take him to realise that this one might not actually go his way before he stepped the game up. And we touched on it earlier on in the season. He's gone back into the sim after being so against it and saying that the time in the sim was not really worth doing, but he's back in the sim now, so lots of changes on his end help click him back into place. We did think that Brazil and Qatar would be sort of hit and miss tracks where they could have gone either way, which it showed as well. Like Red Bull were fast at Brazil, it just didn't quite go their way, but Lewis was just faster in the end. And again, Max was there or thereabouts by the race, but he couldn't do anything better after getting that grid drop.
Mercedes were super, super fast in that midsection, which was the triple left-hand sweeper, which the drivers absolutely loved. But that was a majority of where Mercedes were actually getting their speed, which, if you go over the course of the season, goes against what was happening. Like if you look at Zandvoort, for example, Mercedes were nowhere.
Yeah, that was a bit bit less flow to Zandvoort though. Like there was all the corners were coming thicker and faster after each other, and more were sort of more medium to low speed corners, where it's the high speed cornering that doesn't affect them so much in terms of pace, and has more of an effect on the Red Bull being slower. If you look at all the corners or all the tracks that are tighter, low to medium speed corners, you bang them in the Red Bull bucket straight away. Whereas as soon as it becomes a faster, flowy track like Qatar, like Abu Dhabi, like Brazil, then they start to favour back towards the Mercedes. And with their new rear suspension, whatever they're doing there, that whatever tricks they've brought on, that's dropping the rear suspension and giving them that extra little bit of drag reduction, I think that's helping a lot as well. Yeah, no, and look, if Hamilton and Mercedes pull this off, no doubt it's the best of his 8 championships by a fair margin, in my opinion. 100%. Yeah, it'll be one of the great escapes, that's for sure, because Red Bull should have had this one signed up by now. There's, both teams have made plenty of mistakes, and probably both deserve to win it. There can only be one champion, but whoever wins this one, they're going to have earned it, that's for sure. Oh, 100%. 100%. How would you rate, in the history of climatic title fights, where would you rate this one? Wow, up there for sure. I think we touched on this a few episodes ago that we've got the Rosberg Hamilton year that was pretty epic, with them two taking each other out on a couple of occasions. We've got the Hill Schumacher era. We've got Prost Senna. Man, they're all good for different reasons. They're all good because of the caliber of the drivers that are around them, and not walking away with the series. It's up there though. I wouldn't put it as good as the Prost Senna fights, but it's up there for sure. Yeah, look, for me, Prost Senna is probably the higher level of the two, because they were just supreme. Yeah. Like, by the time that these titles reached their peak, Prost had some championships under his belt, and Senna had one. And I would say in 89 was when it really hit its crescendo. So Senna had won the title in 88. Prost had already won in 2 or 3 or whatever it was by that stage off the top of my head. So 89 was all-out war, in particular from about mid-season. This is up there. It'd be in the conversation with maybe, say, top 5, top 6 title climaxes. Yeah. But purely because you've got someone that's won 7 versus Zip. What I think is more intriguing with this title fight is the fight in those other ones that we're talking about, with the Hill Schumacher, Senna, Prost sort of relationships, even the Rosberg Hamilton one. It was all intra-team with Hamilton. It was with the drivers, and then Prost and Senna was with the drivers. But this one seems more amicable between Lewis and Max, and the fight is really between the heads, the team principals. It seems more nitpicky from Christian Horner and from Toto. Yeah. God bless him, Shay. I told you I'd mention him tonight, just to keep you on your toes. But it seems more like Toto and Christian are at war with each other, rather than the two drivers doing the he said, she said stuff. So that's what's more interesting in this one for me. Yeah. Before we go to our 8 o'clock news, did Shay notice that Toto had a haircut? We're pretty spiff. We haven't really had their Formula 1 on this weekend with all of the stuff happening with Bathurst, but at 2:30 tomorrow morning, she might notice that Toto's had a haircut if something exciting goes on in the Formula 1. I think she'll be thinking about her 5th lap in the middle of her sleep while you're up watching the race of the birds. We're off to 8 o'clock news, and we'll come back and we'll continue to review the Formula 1.
Radio Italia 1.
You're listening to Negative Camber, proudly sponsored by Tindo Solar, the only Australian-made solar panel. Tindo's panels are made right here in Adelaide and are built for our unique Aussie weather. Call them today on 1300 846 367.
Welcome back to Negative Camber, the motorsport show at Radio Italia 1 87.6 FM, proudly supporting Scuderia Ferrari Club Adelaide. So, we had the LaSalle race, and we had obviously we've known the results. What do you think the drivers thought there, Mr. Harrison? Well, I think we are going to find out right now.
It's been great this weekend. First stint was really strong. They were still very fast, as you could see. They went past people so easily. So we've been strong. So I'm excited for these next 2 races. I think we've got a car, and if we can get the car in a good place in these next 2, I think we should be real strong.
It was an exciting start. It got really close with Fernando into turn 2, but the rest. I mean, quite quickly I was back into P2, and from there onwards I tried to keep the gap small so they could not do a pit stop or like an extra pit stop.
I think we were maybe on pure pace 4th or 5th, but then obviously we gambled on the strategy, only one stop. Perez did 2, and we managed to step on the podium with 2 great champions, with Max and Luis on the podium, so that means a lot for me as well.
I think we played it the safe way as a team. We were concerned about the tires basically exploding out there, so I think at the end of the day we were thinking the long-term picture, and it's a good result for the team.
I'm so glad to see Fernando on the podium. He has driven to the ultimate excellence, as he always does, and I'm glad that obviously he's on the podium. For me, from 9th to 5th is also a fantastic result. Very pleased with our race, our pace. We take 25 points out of AlphaTauri.
We really had strong pace. I was really able to attack every lap, and the car was feeling good.
The start wasn't easy with the medium, against the softs. Then we were so concerned about the tire life that we had to drive conservatively. But it's what it is, and in the end it paid off.
Whenever I had free air, I could show my true pace, and I'm quite happy to see that the pace is back after the change of chassis, because yesterday it was a bit worrying to see so much lack of pace, and obviously even though you see the chassis is damaged, you never know how much is in the chassis damaged or whatever, so to find back the pace after that change feels good.
I think we deserved a lot more today. We could have been P4 at least without the puncture, so could have had some good points and a nice result, but we didn't.
We were basically at the back of the train after turn 1, so reasonable recovery, but not ideal because we lost too much ground, and then the pace was good to come back, but I think we could have scored more today.
After yesterday's incident, we changed the front wing, we changed the floor. I don't know if it had an impact. We used also our 2 mediums in quali, so they were not new in the race. I don't know if it had an impact. There were a couple of things which were different than usual, but very frustrating not to be able to fight with all these guys.
Already from lap 1 I had some fuel warnings on the dash, which you don't get on lap 1, so I ignored it because I thought, okay, it's just an error in the dash. But then quite early I was told you need to start seriously saving fuel, and I saved quite a lot, like already what I thought was maybe too much, and I was told it's not enough, so to a point where we were saving, I don't know, probably going 2 seconds a lap slower.
Just first stint, especially soft tire was too slow. There's a reason background was really slow, not just the tire, but still overall we struggled too much.
We gained some positions, but in the end I was catching up, but just lacking a bit speed. And
we had a great first lap, and after that, the pace was just that. We opted for to stop. I think in the end it was okay. After the second stop, I stuck behind Williams. I lost a little bit of time there, but in the end, more than what we did was impossible.
It was good. I think we're happy that we made the strategy work that we chose and committed to. So on that behalf, we were happy, and we were very close to the Alphas, which is what we expected. But on the other hand, as well, not from the beginning of the year. So we're happy that we're here now.
I think we just need to look at the overall aspects why we weren't on the pace this weekend when we probably expected a little bit more. But at the end of the day, nothing gained, nothing lost versus Alpha, who are our main rivals at the moment.
I mean, I did decent laps, I think, towards the end of the last stint, and certainly didn't drive like it was race tyres. I drove like it was quality tyres, and obviously learned the track. There was every session out there, but very hot race.
The results obviously bad, but I mean, we did our part to try and race the Alphas, and I guess we couldn't really expect much more.
With the puncture, there's no warning, like no vibration, no loss of grip. Everything was feeling normal, and the pace was really consistent. And then it just happened. So, but not the first time, to be honest.
So that was the driver reaction, and my reaction initially, seeing Fernando in third place, was it's about time.
How good. I think that sort of rubber stamps to all the doubters out there, whether he was too old to do it, that he's still got what it takes. And Fernando, he's always there when it counts, and ready to pick up the pieces when the others have a bad weekend, and that's exactly what he's done this weekend in particular, and taken home a podium. How awesome.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I think there should have been a couple of drives that he's done earlier this year that were worthy of podiums, even just by pure grit and effort, if you had to give him one.
Yeah.
But certainly when he qualified fifth, and then you had the penalties applied to Max for the double wave yellows, etc. as well, all of a sudden you kind of thought, you know what, Fernando is going to be doing Fernando things today. Like you could tell straight away that he was going to be in the box seat to do something special.
Yeah.
So no, I'm really happy with the fact that he's finally done it, and I actually got a funny feeling that we might see some more podium positions later this year as well. I think Alpine, have improved from last year, certainly from a consistency standpoint. But then at the same token, you've got to take into consideration that, you know, that they haven't really done a huge amount of development on the car in preparation for next year as well.
And they've been there sort of to pick up the pieces where they weren't last season. Even Esteban's had a podium this season, and they've not really ever been in the contention to pick up the pieces when the others have had a bad round. They've always been your perennial midfielders, whereas now they're in that fight where, you know, points are almost guaranteed every weekend. Be on their cards that we have to score points every weekend and, you know, pick up the pieces where we can. But did you know that was Fernando's 98th podium and the first time he's stood on the podium since the Hungarian Grand Prix in 2014?
I did know. Did you know that you just stole my thunder for my winners and losers segment in the next part of the show?
Sorry about that. I'm full of surprises, as one wise man said to me in the break just then. But I've also got some other stats about what the world was like the last time Fernando Alonso stood on the podium.
Oh, here we go.
Lewis Hamilton had won his first world championship at that point. He only had one world championship to his name.
Mm-hmm.
Max Verstappen was yet to have driven a Formula One car. He was still in Formula 3. And the Ferraris had pinned their hopes on up-and-coming youngster Jules Bianchi. That was what the world looked like in 2014 when Alonso last stood on the podium.
Yeah, Jules Bianchi, God bless his soul, could have been anything and everything he wanted to be, I think.
Absolutely, had the world at his feet. Poor
100%.
Fella.
Yep, 100%. Alfa Romeo found their feet, ironically enough, at that track and actually had some half-decent competitiveness, which was good to see, considering that in the build-up, they were in no man's land.
Yeah, it still failed to score points, though, which is unfortunate for them, but showed some speed, which Raikkonen was super happy about and was looking to mix it. But again, like I said, they just sort of failed off the back there and didn't get into the points.
Yep, and what were your thoughts on Lance Stroll's drive?
To be honest, I didn't see much of Lance Stroll. I have yet to watch the full replay back. So what were your thoughts on Stroll's drive?
Oh, look, for me, he showed Aston Martin showed some serious pace in P2 and P3 leading up to qualifying. Qualifying, they had a bit of a whoops, especially Lance. But his pace, in particular from the onset in the early part of the race, was exceptional. I mean, even Vettel, if Vettel didn't have such a bad start, he probably would have finished higher than 10th as well, which he indicated in his post-race interview too. But I thought that was probably the most competitive showing that Aston Martin had showed for quite a long time. Probably, I'd go as far as saying Baku, because they've been very up and down this year. Of all the teams that were hardest hit by the FIA regulation at the beginning of the year when they were cutting bodywork, and reducing the floor and that type of thing, they were probably it.
And when they had to throw out the Mercedes copy stuff that they were using last year?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. So, I mean, next year will be interesting to see what they come up with from a new car standpoint, like I guess all the other teams there.
Yep.
But I think Lance has struggled against Vettel this year. There's been little glimmers of speed, and at one point he went for maybe 3 or 4 race run where he was out qualifying him. But Vettel has definitely shown his class overall over the whole, for the most part of the year as well. So
the result that surprised me was AlphaTauri with Gasly. They really went from hero to zero. They were lining up on the front row of the grid after the penalties had been applied, and then both cars failed to score points. It seemed that their race pace just went nowhere.
Where would you see Pierre Gasly as a driver now compared to when he left Red Bull, and would you see him back there?
I don't ever see him going back to Red Bull. I think they've got their hopes set on other drivers now. Guys like Liam Lawson and Jahan Daravila that are coming through the Formula 2 ranks. Even Jack Doohan is under the Red Bull banner as well. So I think they're focusing on the next crop of drivers coming through. I think for Pierre, if he sees a future for himself in Formula 1, it's going to be outside of the Red Bull stable or permanently in the second tier team. But
yeah, it's a good question. Where would you put him?
Oh, he could go wherever he wants on the form that he's on at the moment. Like, he's absolutely driving the wheels off of that AlphaTauri. So, you know, if Daniel Ricciardo doesn't pull his finger out, he'd be a good side to Lando, or he's French, so maybe he goes and does a French super team with Esteban Ocon at Alpine. So plenty of options for him. It's just a matter of where he sees fit to be the best for his chances in his career.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's there was definitely some tyre failures and stuff like that, which added a little bit of spice. Pity they didn't blow smoke on the water like Deep Purple.
You're listening to Negative Camber, proudly sponsored by Tindo Solar, the only Australian-made solar panel. Tindo's panels are made right here in Adelaide and are built for our unique Aussie weather. Call them today on 1300 846 367.
Welcome back to Negative Camber, South Australia's only motorsport program hosted on Radio Italia Uno 87.6 FM. Well, Jamie, there was some winners and losers from the Formula 1 Grand Prix at Qatar, and you're going to run through them for us now.
Yes, I am, mate. And I will start with my dear friend, Mr. Lewis Hamilton, as the winner. So he's on a roll. 7 times champion, picking up where he left off in Brazil with a scintillating performance in both qualifying and the race to secure not only his second back-to-back victory of the season, but also closing the championship points gap to 8 points. Did you know that it was actually his 7th win of the year, only his 3rd for the summer break, and the 102nd of his career? However, it was also the 175th race he has led and the 30th different circuit where he graced the top step of the podium. Fascinating to see if he can actually beat Max.
I hope that he can, take the fight down to the last race. It's going to be on for sure tonight at Saudi Arabia. But in addition to your did you know that this being the 175th time he's led a Grand Prix, that there are actually only 20 drivers in Formula 1 history that have raced more times than he has led Formula 1 races.
I'm impressed because I've been did you knowed by you, my friend, Mr. Harrison. Did you know that I want to thank you for covering me for the intro, because I struggled to get my earphones on, and I want to thank our producer, Mark Aston, for getting me out of the poo.
Pleasure.
A boy's got to do what a boy's got to do, and I saw you struggling with those headphones, took it upon myself to fix your problem for you.
Thank you. So that's what good teammates do.
It was like we were actually sort of changing a tyre together.
And no one would have known and have been any the wiser if you hadn't said anything.
I know, but we've got to give them we've got to paint a picture for them for what they might see on the web show.
Well, yeah, your clumsiness.
Exactly. Loser, Lee Harrison. No,
been called worse. So
that's true.
I'll take it.
Valtteri Bottas. So he put the Mercedes in a strong position by strategically for the race, as he qualified 3rd, with Perez starting in 11th. The yellow flag infringement in qualifying didn't help, which triggered a 3-place grid penalty, and he fell out of the top 10 on the opening lap after a poor getaway. Struggled with lack of grip on the medium tyre as well. Fought his way back up, but then the tyre failure, which led to the blowout after he passed the pit entry, ended hopes of points and then retired the car.
What a crappy spot to get a blown tyre. I think the same happened with Pierre when he was in qualifying. Like, he just was about to pass that pit entry, that new and improved pit entry for the Losail circuit, which they had to have completed especially for the event. And then, the puncture came. So worse timing you could not find.
No.
And unfortunately failed to finish on that account.
If it was ever a driver that was going to happen to, it would be Valtteri, though. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Winner, Fernando Alonso. So if it was up to him, every lap of the season would probably be at Losail. really loved the track, and that showed in his qualifying, really. Put a top 5 lap in, and then got elevated to third after all the penalties were applied to Max. Smart tyre management, stout defence from Esteban Ocon as well during the race, because Esteban really owed Fernando after Hungary.
Tell Esteban to defend like a lion.
Exactly. See? And it meant that he secured third, and it was actually his first podium since the 2014 Hungarian Grand Prix.
But we already knew that, so
you did.
It stole your thunder.
However, did you know, Mr. Harrison, that he was only the third driver over 40 in the last 35 years to stand on the podium? The other two, Nigel Mansell in Adelaide in 1994, and I was going to say the late Michael Schumacher, but he's not dead. Schumacher.
Breaking news.
Exactly. Break something else in a minute. And Schumacher in Valencia in 2012. Okay. Loser, AlphaTauri. So AlphaTauri were actually on a strong run before Qatar, and they actually scored 28 points, which was, did you know, 25% of their total this season in the last 4 races alone. So they look set to continue that form after getting both cars in the top 10 in qualifying. And we'll start with Pierre Gasly first, because it's a double act here. Pierre Gasly was actually in the box seat to capitalise with the penalties, because he actually started on the front row of the grid. High tyre deg, though, forced an early stop, and that dropped him into traffic and pretty much didn't recover thereafter. Yuki Tsunoda had to actually stop early after a visor strip became lodged in his rear wing. Clearly their DRS passed the scrutineering with the FIA. And he then actually put him out of the points. So for the third time in 7 races, the team actually failed to score.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, it's really unfortunate for them. Went from hero to zero, and obviously they had their setup ready for a really quick run in qualifying because both drivers did really well, and then the race car was eating its tyres up like a Cookie Monster. So, no good for them.
Yeah, 100%. Makes you wonder what they did on the practice days in terms of getting tyre wear management and that sort of thing set up as well.
Some of the practices were held in, a bit more day conditions, which you would think would have higher degradation as well. But maybe I don't know. The track wasn't as reading as they expected.
Probably rub it up a lot more too, with more Ks on the clock as well. So, winner Aston Martin. So a challenging season for the team, dropping them down the pecking order, struggling to compete for points on a regular basis, which we established earlier. However, they did enjoy their best outing since after the summer break, getting both cars into the points for only the 3rd time this season. 9 points was their best point score since Baku. So, big disappointment for me this year, Aston Martin. I did expect more. Mind you, I didn't actually think that the flooring would impact them so much.
Yeah, big building year for them though, and like we've said with a couple of other teams, their focus would not be on this year. It'll be on making sure that their car for next year is in tip-top shape.
Loser, Mr. Max Verstappen. Damage limitation exercise for Max. He was actually he's been losing more momentum as the championship's gone on over the last couple of races, as he was unable to put Lewis under pressure. Great comeback. 7th from 7th, really. So, pretty solid. Probably about as good as it was going to get. But still lost points to Lewis. So, heads into the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, which will cover qualifying in a minute, down to 8 points. Winner, Ferrari. Bit slower than what they've been in the past compared to the last 4 races, but they still had enough pace to get both cars in the top 8 for the 5th race in succession. Did you know? My boy, King Carlos Sainz extended his active scoring run to 13 races in a row and his active finishing run to 27 races. See? Brains. While teammate Leclerc finished outside of the top 5 for the first time in 5 races. Collective haul was enough to maintain that 39.5 point gap, clear of McLaren in the fight for P3.
Yeah, McLaren have really sort of let that one slip, and the almost win in Russia seems to have deflated them a little bit with the wrong call on pitting Lando for wets instead of and him staying out on slicks. But they seemed really on fire after Ricciardo's and Norris's 1-2 at Monza, and since then McLaren have been on a bit of a downward stroke. Again, they had the fuel sensor issue at Qatar, which laid plans to Daniel Ricciardo's race. They struggled to score points as well, with Norris only finishing in 10th. So, Yeah, Ferrari have got a big advantage. It's going to be hard for McLaren to overcome them in the fight for third in the championship now. Ferrari have pretty well done what they needed to do, and I think they're on fire again this weekend, despite a couple of crashes.
Yeah, and we'll touch on the qualifying over now for the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix at the new circuit. So Lewis Hamilton landed on pole, Valtteri Bottas second, Max Verstappen crashing out, and we'll touch on that in a second, and still ended in P3. Charles Leclerc fourth, Sergio Perez fifth, Pierre Gasly sixth, Lando Norris seventh, Yuki Tsunoda in 8th, Esteban Ocon in 9th, and Giovinazzi in 10th position. Big takeaway from that, Max Verstappen on what would have been the pole lap, crumbling under a little bit of pressure, missing the apex on the exit of the last corner and smacking it into the wall. Has there been any news overnight or any news at all as to whether he's going to get a grid drop?
Not that I've seen as we sit here at 8:30 on Sunday night, with the race taking place in about another 6 hours' time. So nothing's come yet, but I don't expect there to be. They were pretty confident that it was only a sort of a small hit and it was more wheel damage and rod ends and all that sort of stuff and suspension arms. But yeah, he just pushed that little bit too much. He was 2.5 tenths up and just needed to hit his marks in that final corner, but was pushing on and locked the front brake. It pushed him that little bit wide, and it was only a glance, but that was all it took to end that run.
What are your thoughts on the Jeddah track?
It's fast.
Seriously
it's fast. And it's going to be interesting to see how the traffic plays out, because they're going to be coming up on them so quickly and so blindly that you could probably lose 2, 3, 4 seconds quite easily. So if you're Lewis and you're out in front and Max tries the undercut or something and you pick traffic and lose a few seconds, it's going to be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Quick tip for tonight before we go to a break.
Max.
Well, look, if he gets a penalty and it's a grid drop, I think it's going to be tough. My heart would tell and my head tell me Lewis, and I think that we're probably going to go to the last race of the year tight on points. So we'll have to wait and see.
We will. It's going to be tight, like you said, but there's enough overtaking there that I think if Max can make the most of the 3 DRS zones, he's going to be able to keep up with Lewis again, like we saw at Austin Circuit of the Americas. I think the pace is there over the race distance for the Red Bull, but I think they just got beaten to the punch, so to speak, in quali.
Sure thing. Well, it's going to be a cracker, no doubt about it. They've always been since we've been on this show, so let the good times roll with that as well. We'll be off to a break, and then we'll come back and review the big one, the Bathurst 1000.
Radio Italia 1.
You're listening to Negative Camber, proudly sponsored by Tindo Solar, the only Australian-made solar panel. Tindo's panels are made right here in Adelaide and are built for our unique Aussie weather. Call them today on 1300 846 367.
Welcome back to Negative Camber, live from the studios of Radio Italia 1 on 87.6 FM and proudly supporting the Scuderia Ferrari Club of Adelaide. We now come to the big one. Christmas Day for motorsport fans, the Holy Grail, the Bathurst 1000 proudly sponsored by Repco. And what a race. The weekend, it was a super week, really. We had all the premier categories at the track, and times were fast. It was on track to be the fastest ever Bathurst 1000 on record. It would have gone under 6 hours quite comfortably, if not for the spate of safety cars in the last sort of 50 laps or so. However, you could probably say it was largely dominated by Walkinshaw Andretti United and the Chaz Mostert and Lee Holdsworth combination.
Yeah, 9 sessions, including the race. The worst position at the end of any of those sessions was third. They had a super strong week. I know I said to you earlier this morning when we spoke that they were going to be hard to beat, and it definitely came out to be that way. The pole position curse did not strike. Well, it sort of did with that tyre delamination around lap 49 there. I thought that was going to end their race. I was gutted for them. But even when it put them off kilter, they ended up still just minding their own business, and they stretched their lead out to be something around the mark of like 35 seconds when everyone else had pitted at the same amount of time. So they were killing it. They were so fast, and even the car of Bryce Fullwood and Warren Luff. Warren Luff is the absolute master of Bathurst. Every time he becomes someone's co-driver there, I think he parks it inside the top 10. Not bad for a guy that just comes and does Bathurst. But yeah, they had something figured out, that's for sure.
Yeah, look, I haven't seen pace domination of this nature. I would probably go as far as saying since probably 2008 when Craig Lowndes and Jamie Whincup dominated that race where they sort of got the treble of their three-peat.
Yeah.
It's been a long, long time since we've seen a leader up by 34 seconds plus on genuine pace. I mean, for the first 48 laps, they pulled a 13-second lead, and at some points they were nearly a second a lap faster than the next best placed car.
Yeah, Lee Holdsworth did an absolutely mega job. He'd done a mega job all weekend, and Chaz was quoted as saying during the weekend that he nearly qualified the car because he was only 1/10 off of Chaz in their qualifying simulation runs. So had he beaten Chaz in that qualifying sim, it might have been Lee Holdsworth qualifying the car.
What it goes to show to me is how there's so many high quality drivers that actually should still be on that grid. There is no way that you can tell me that Lee Holdsworth is just an enduro driver in terms of quality. Even Michael Caruso.
Yeah.
I mean, Michael, if you ask Michael today, Team 18 and Mark Winterbottom, who I'd sort of tipped were going to be they were a bit of a disappointment for me today, purely on pace that just didn't have it. But those guys should be on the grid full time.
Yep. 100%.
I hope under the new Gen 3 cars, which we'll touch on in a minute, they allow bigger grids.
Yeah.
They have to.
And make it cheap enough to get into the sport so that people can buy their racing entitlement contracts and facilitate a car. But there's so many guys out there, look at the car that finished third, David Russell. He was on the podium and didn't put a foot wrong the whole race. You had James Moffat, he finished second, didn't put a foot wrong. There's so many guys that come and rock up at these co-driver events that barely drive a car all year long and then get thrown in the mix of the greatest race in Australian motor racing and a run right up there and on pace with the main game guys. It's a travesty that they're not racing more full time.
It's funny, I was watching the race at my brother's house today, and his wife, my sister-in-law Fran, was on the couch, and it was probably about 3 laps in, and Scott Pye and James Goulding pulled into the pits, and Goulding was devastated because of the power steering pump that blew and affected the steering rack. And then they interviewed Scott Pye, and he was just holding off the emotion. And I turned around to him and I said, that's how much that race means.
Yep.
Right? That is how much it means to those guys. And that was, for me, it was my dream, was to race that race, and be a part of it.
You only have to look at that even further along the pits with Will Brown and Jack Perkins. They did the power steering as well, and Jack came into the pits and
he was gutted,
didn't even lift his visor up. And you're right, it does. That's such an emotional week. It's such an intense mental and physical build-up. All of the publicity that goes on around it, all of the extra commitments that come commercially because of it, and then you got to jump in the car and to only last. What it was like a 1 lap for Goulding before he came in, and less than sort of 10 to 12 laps before the power steering pump blew on Jack Perkins. So to have it all end like that, when there's still 5.5 hours left of racing to go, absolutely gutting.
Yeah, but even the Erebus cars had genuine pace too. I mean, Will Brown, they got relegated after the top 10 shootout when they were sort of up in the top half dozen.
Yeah.
And for those listening at home that weren't aware of it, so Erebus got done for having lightweight doors. And
bonnet.
And bonnet.
Yeah.
And so you'll say, well, how? Well, so essentially the cars weighed in at the correct limit, actually overweight.
Yeah.
But what has actually happened is because of the fact that these teams were on a 6-week schedule where they were racing back to back to back to back to back in Sydney, they were crisscrossing parts and bits and pieces between the cars, and they vinyl wrap them and all that sort of stuff, so they're not painted and sprayed on. So what they actually do is to keep ballast in the car, they'll actually lower the centre of gravity with weight. And so it was only a 20mm piece of lead weight that was actually missing from the doors on both cars, which actually led them to be underweight by a technical breach. So V8 supercars basically say that the lighter weight door means that you can play with the ballast of the car, which then affects performance. And so therefore they didn't meet the rules.
Yeah, that was all brought in when we were having all the centre of gravity issues with the Mustang versus Holden when it came in a couple of years ago. So the doors and the bonnet and the boot have all got away. weight, and if they don't, they're technically underneath the rules, so they got wiped out. And like you said, exactly right. If the doors don't weigh the right amount and they can use the ballast somewhere else in the car, it brings the centre of gravity down, which helps the cornering of the car, and especially around a track like Bathurst, if you can help the cornering using the gravity rather than having to stress the tyres as much, that's going to be a massive advantage. So they fixed it, and they were still fast, so they still had out and out pace. It wasn't like that was the reason that they were fast. It wasn't going to make a huge amount of difference for them with the amount that they were underweight. It's not like they were 55 kilos each door underweight, but rules are rules, and they got done, unfortunately.
Yeah, 100%. A couple of key notes. Some of the quality of driving this weekend I thought was absolutely superb in the main game. Some of the passing in key parts that traditionally have never been passing spots. So after the safety car restart, when we had the echidna, an echidna actually crawled on the track.
How Australian, though. We've had tyres coming off of cars and smashing windscreens. We've had rain. We've had too much heat, so the tracks fall apart. We've had kangaroos, and now Eddie the echidna.
An echidna.
Yeah.
There was an albino wallaby.
There was an albino wallaby, yeah.
And then a lizard the size of a crocodile just off the track as well.
Yeah.
But an echidna basically brought the safety car out for them. It was the first time after about lap 3 or 4. And then, in the first half dozen laps anyway. And so what that did was actually brought the race alive. And so Jamie Wincup's passed Chaz Mostert on the outside of the cutting.
Beautifully orchestrated by SVG, though.
100%.
He knew 100% what he was doing, backing the field up and holding Chaz in play to get Jamie around the outside.
Yeah, and then Brody Kostecki's pass on the inside of Cameron Waters going through McPhillamy Park on the grass.
Yeah. That was ballsy.
Yeah, 100%. That could have been career-ending.
Yeah.
If he didn't pull that off.
And then when he went around the outside of limping Van Gisbergen, who had popped a tyre, he brushed the wall as well. Like, far out, man. There's some and even some passes going into the cutting. Like, Chaz passed. I think it might have been Anton De Pasquale into the cutting, or Davison, one of the Shell V-Power cars. But there was just passes going on all over the shop. So it was a tight race, and James Courtney's drive back through the field after him and Randall got dragged out of the gravel trap. Good on supercars for putting in the lucky dog rule. So cars that are a lap down get to pass the safety car and get their laps back. That's a good rule that brings the contenders back into play and gives them something to race for if they have one small mistake early on in the race. Yeah,
100%. I think also one of the other men of the match was Todd Hazelwood. Todd should be a special mention for him. So he showed genuine top 10 pace all weekend, was compromised with a fuel mapping issue for qualifying, which jeopardised their straight line speed, which is what you don't want to have at Bathurst. So he qualified sort of towards the back half of the field. And then over the course of the race, they had a exhaust issue. They had a brake balance issue, where it was a warped disc, I think you were saying.
Warped rotor, yeah.
Warped rotor as well. And then to come from near the back of the field to then finish in eighth position overall on the lead lap, maybe less than 20, 30 seconds off the overall lead. Sensational effort.
Absolutely gun pit stop strategy. I sort of stopped really keeping an eye on him. He was sitting around 17th, and after with the brake rotor issue and the exhaust issue, I was like, they're sort of going to be resided to a fact that they're going to finish outside the top 10 and down the back. And then sort of just as I was leaving to come into the studio tonight, I had a look at where he was and caught back up with his race, and he was sitting just on the cusp of the top 10. I thought if he gets a couple of lucky breaks here, he could well and truly get up inside the top 5, but didn't quite make it that high. Got up to 8th, and that's an absolutely stellar job considering. We were super excited for him this season. He obviously had Dean Fiore, who's a very seasoned co-driver around the mountain as well, and Dean did an amazing job and didn't put a foot wrong. So stoked for Todd to get such a good result in his last outing with BJR, and he's off to Matt Stone Racing, and hopefully he gets some more good equipment.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more. So very quickly, the top 3, Chaz Mostert first with Lee Holdsworth. Second was Cameron Waters and James Moffat. Cracking drive. Third was Brody Kostecki and Dave Russell. So, and for those that want to know, Jamie Whincup ended up finishing 4th with Craig Lowndes. Todd Hazelwood came in 8th for the South Australian contingent, and Tim Slade as well in 9th. Very quickly, your
Percat
take
was in 6th.
Ah, yes, Nick Percat too.
Had a good run, 6th position, so that was good for him.
Yeah, 100%. Great effort. Very quickly before we go to our final break, your take on the new Gen 3 cars that came out.
Yeah, look, I'm pretty excited to see them. I hope that they've taken some of the aero off of the cars so that we can get some even closer racing and some more passing without damaging the front tyres and overheating the engines and stuff so much. But in all respects, they look great. I wish that they'd put the Australian flag on the front of the Camaro instead of using the American flag still, but hey, we'll let that one slide through to the vinyl wrapping keeper. But yeah, should be exciting. I'm super excited to see them come in 2023.
Yeah, they look sensational, and they sound fantastic too. So if that's a glimpse of what 2023 is going to look like, I think the sport is still well and truly alive and well. So we'll be off to our final break, and then we'll come back and we'll find out what grinds your gears.
Radio Italia 1.
You're listening to Negative Camber, proudly sponsored by Tindo Solar, the only Australian-made solar panel. Tindo's panels are made right here in Adelaide and are built for our unique Aussie weather. Call them today on 1300 846 367.
Welcome back to Negative Camber, proudly supporting Scuderia Ferrari Club Adelaide. We're on the final lap here at the studios of Radio Italia Uno on 87.6 FM. What grinds your gears, my feathered friend?
Oh, I was tossing up between two tonight, but I'm going to go with the lateness of these mid-European, mid-Eastern Formula One races. I'm sick of having to be up until God knows what time of the morning just to watch a Formula One race. Like, I used to live in the Middle East. There's a much more convenient time that this race could be on, but they want the spectacle of the not racing in the heat and the lights and all this jazz that they spend copious amounts of money on. But now I'm going to have to sit up till 2:30 in the morning to catch the start of the Formula One Grand Prix. Can't they think of us? I know we're, the little land down under, but we have lives too. I've got to work tomorrow.
Well, lucky you're the big cheese and you can afford to dictate what start time you have.
Well, this is also true, but I also want to go into work without black eyes.
Well, the pity I have for you right now is nil, because you could drink that Bang energy drink and have all the vitality and energy you need.
Exactly. The Bang energy drinks are going to get me through thanks to At Future Foods.
Yes.
And I'll probably stop at the OTR convenience store on my way home and grab one and some other little lovely treats to pleasure myself on while I wait for the Grand Prix to start to help get me through. Shameless plugs there, but hey.
Yeah, I know. Actually, I've got to pull over to the OTR myself, and I'm doing a fuel economy run on the Civic.
Remind me of my wife. She got in the car to go to basketball the other night, and she said 8 kilometres of fuel left and 11 kilometres of distance to go. Do you think I'll make it? And I said, you better roll off the throttle, honey.
Yeah, exactly. Luckily, we've got the servo around the corner on West Terrace. Oh dear. What grinds my gears? Nothing really that comes to mind. You know what? Actually, no. There is something that grinds my gears, and I'm going to go the short-sightedness of the current Liberal government in removing the Adelaide 500, which has resulted in potentially no South Australian V8 supercar races on next year's calendar. Come on. Yeah. Not even the Bend has been able to actually get onto the calendar, which is a different scenario by itself. But I think the fact that South Australia, which at this present stage has no spot on the V8 supercars calendar, given the fact that we've proudly been on that sometimes twice in the last 20 to 30 years, is deplorable, despicable, disgusting, short-sighted.
I agree.
And the list goes on, I'm still waiting, Stephen Marshall, for you to actually provide Adelaide with the international or national event that was going to replace the economic benefits that the Adelaide 500 brought to this state.
And the Tour Down Under as well. That's been cancelled again. So what event is he... But we've got no events, but wants to build a $600 million plus new stadium on the bank of the River Torrens, when we could probably spend, a quarter of that and upgrade the already very accessible Adelaide Entertainment Centre. But... I do, for all our loyal listeners out there and everyone out in radio and podcast city, just if you're very much aware of the situation regarding the government's position here in South Australia and what the opposition may want to do, I feel like if you read very, very closely between the lines, there's some very, very exciting stuff that could potentially happen. This is just my sort of spitballing ideas anyway, but if you're a motorsport fan and you can read between lines, have a close look at the news and what's been going around them in the social media circles and make a good decision come next March.
But, you know what, and that's the thing for me. Right now it's an if. It shouldn't be an if. It's got to be... There's a South Australian supercar race on the calendar without fail.
Yeah, there should
We
be.
shouldn't have to wait for something that may or may not happen.
With the amount of drivers that we've got in the field, it's
100%.
absolutely crazy. Or the amount of drivers that we've produced to take part in the field, it's an absolute debacle that South Australia doesn't have a cemented position in the V8 supercar calendar.
100%. We've got 3, and all 3 are top-line drivers, and they cannot have a home. There's half a dozen in Victoria, 3 or 4 in Sydney, a couple in Queensland, there's 1 in the Northern Territory, they've got some in Perth. They've covered every other part of Australia outside of.
Yep.
And Tasmania. They've got Tasmania as well, but they can't do something in South Australia.
Only the ACT and South Australia. They've got one in New Zealand, but only the ACT and South Australia do not have a round next year.
Yeah, I think it's despicable, and I think to the fact that it's gotten to this point now, whether the Shaheens, etc., are still in negotiations. I know they were really pushing to have an endurance race, and that hasn't come to fruition. What it has done with all the crap, right, and the politics between one and the other has actually jeopardised the whole thing altogether.
Absolutely.
I think it's deplorable.
Yeah.
I think it's deplorable, and I think that as politicians and people that have the benefit of the state have a damn good look in the mirror, right, and understand what you've potentially lost and sacrificed.
Yeah.
All right.
The other thing that's really grinding my gears at the moment is this COVID and borders reopening and shutting and opening again rubbish as well. It's potentially going to cancel another race meeting. I'm hearing whispers out of the paddock. Porsche Carrera Cup have pulled the pin on coming to the Bend next weekend to race, and without a headliner like the Porsche Carrera Cup, it's very, very possible that the Shannon's Nationals whole round at the Bend next weekend will be cancelled because of COVID restrictions and entry passes and all that sort of stuff. And I was actually fearful for the AKC, but that's been confirmed that it's going to happen. But, anything again can change in the next few days. And if the government decides to slam the border shut again because we keep getting a few case numbers, man, I'm just sick and tired of it. I'm so sick and tired of it.
Well, you know what? I also feel sorry for the South Australian pundits that went over to Bathurst that were apparently had to leave early to make sure that if the borders did actually close, that was not going to be the case. That they didn't. And so what they've done is they've actually left the circuit. They've gone back to South Australia. They've missed out on the Bathurst 1000. They're not going to get their money back from V8 supercars because why should they?
Yeah.
The race still went ahead. Right, but again, it's the foresight and the short-sightedness of the current leadership that actually jeopardises it. Ironically, we're going to close the borders on the biggest event of the national calendar on the first week of December when they knew that there was going to be a high level of risk, right, with this omnivirus, COVID virus, how many viruses and however they make the names up.
Yeah.
Right, yes, it's health. Yes, it's a high-level risk. I understand that. Right, but it impacted the spectator numbers on the day as well.
Well, I can tell you that I know that one of our guests next week had a very luxurious ride home from Sydney. He got a chartered flight back with a good friend of his and guy that he does some driver development for. So I made sure I reached out to him and said that he looked like he was really struggling with that ride home. So.
He still owes me a phone call, by the way.
Yeah, I'll get on to him. I'll tell you to message him back.
Breaks my heart. It really does. I looked up to him.
He's just trying to give you the message,
Oh, I know. Yeah. I know.
He said to me, "I hope Jamie's not interviewing me, and I hope it's you when I come into the studio." So you'll have to just pass me along all the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, our web show is going to be the big event that we speak of, where this particular guest is going to be on the show live. Definitely tune in and keep a lookout for the promotional stuff that comes on, but it will be live on the Radio Italia Uno Facebook page, 6 p.m. December 19, and also share it amongst all of your friends and family. Support us. We do this for love, but we also want to do this to spread the word as well. And so, by all means, get it out there. It's going to be a massive event. It's also something that Radio Italia Uno, in terms of a station, have endorsed and supported. And we are going to be out of our comfort zones. I'm sure people are going to take some still frozen photos of us and use this as memes and all that sort of stuff moving forward. So
you're saying I'm going to be a meme? This is awesome. This is like the culmination of all of my life's work into the greatest achievement that is known to man right now, is you becoming a meme.
I'm going to be a walking meme. But no, I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm really looking forward to actually meeting Jeremy Burgess and having a really good sit-down chat with him and learning about Valentino and what he's like behind the scenes and MotoGP as well. So
just remember that is 6 p.m. Adelaide time for all our Eastern States listeners. If you are listening into the podcast, it will be 6 p.m. Adelaide time on the 19th of December, where you'll hear us live on 87.6 FM Radio Italia Uno.
All right, and so by all means, keep some feedback on our Facebook page as well. If you want some topics that you want us to cover between Dean Canto and Jeremy Burgess, interact with us, send some messages, give us some shout-outs. But that's it. That's the end of the show tonight for the Bathurst 1000 day. And thank you for listening, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks' time.
Radio Italia Uno.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.